Welcome to On the Bubble Podcast, episode 137. I'm your host, Basa J. Win, and with me is my co-host, Yuki Lee Bender. Today, we're going to be doing a CC discussion for the Calling Montreal metagame. So, we're going to be recording a couple days before Montreal. We'll try and get this out on Friday for the Montreal. So, if you're going to be playing Montreal, this will be a great episode to listen to. Before that, we will start off by discussing PQ Week 1 data that we just played. I guess we can go right into that. How was your Flesh and Blood week, Yuki?
It was solid. Played a little bit of Sage, getting ready for PQs, and also I've been playing quite a bit of CC. Only got to play the one Sage PQ, so it hasn't been as much of a focus, and instead I've been more focused on Calling Montreal and figuring out what deck list I'm going to be playing there. But we played Sage PQ on the weekend. I had fun. I played Kano. I did not do great. I went 2-0, and then I had like 3 win-ins, and I lost all of them. But I do think Kano is very good and gives you quite a bit of agency. But also, Silver Age can be swingy. Yeah, I don't think I played great in my last game against Anu. I hadn't played that matchup, and that was on me. But I think into KO and the Kano mirror, I largely just, Sage things happened. I got attacked for 23 by KO and did not win that game because he just did that, then never missed on go again. And then I also lost the Kano mirror to trying a bunch of reds at some very inopportune times. So that'll get you killed. But yeah, no. Overall, I think I had fun with the format. I'm interested to see if there will be some changes because as we get into the data, it does seem like there are a few decks overperforming. But yeah, overall, I didn't mind it. It was like fine. I think similar to where we were last week. If this was the main way I played Flesh and Blood, I don't know how much I would play the game. But as play a couple tournaments with this format, I'm okay with it. What was your PQ experience like, Jay?
So my PQ experience, I actually started 0-2, and so I was just straight up dead at the very beginning. I ended up playing Briar, and on the first round, I got paired into another Briar, and I didn't play as tight as I needed to. I don't think it mattered though because I won the die roll, and then I chose to go second, and I think that's correct. But my opponent started with Arcane Seed's Life, Arsenal Pass.
Yeah, 6 points in embodiment on turn 0 is pretty good.
Yeah, I don't know how I'm supposed to ever beat that in Silver Age. Like, 6 life point swing and an embodiment landing, Arsenal Pass, and I'm just like, okay, I guess I just like lose this game, and then I ended up like losing the game by like 1 point. So yeah, it's that's how my Silver Age experience started. And then I got paired into Decimator Great Axe Olympia, and I lost the die roll, and they started with a Felling Swing, so that one was also kind of doomed.
Yeah, the games are really condensed, so it feels like if somebody hits like the really high, it can be really difficult to overcome. And similarly, if you brick, it's you almost can't come back unless your opponent bricks just as bad. And sometimes even then it doesn't matter because you're too low. But yeah, Silver Age. My impression so far is there are a lot of games that get decided within the first like turn or two, even if they don't literally end on that turn. The somebody takes too much damage or it gets too big of an advantage, and it's very hard to overcome because the life totals are so small.
Yeah. I think I really do wish that Silver Age comes and implements like a best of 3 style or a best of 2 style, or just like ways to like maybe even just like add more rounds, because like we finished our PQ in like 4 p.m. starting at like 11, so like the whole PQ including top 8 only took 5 hours.
Yeah, I've seen some people talking about extra rounds as an option. I think we've talked about best of 2 or best of 3. Yeah, I think the format's fine. It's just a little bit high variance, and that is okay. Card games can be high variance, and I think that, again, Silver Age is doing a lot for the game. There's a ton of PQs, like over 150 events this week, and I see a lot of new faces coming out to specifically play Silver Age, which is great. I think Flesh and Blood really needs this. But I do agree that, maybe armories can be best of 1, but once you start getting to PQs and especially the Pro Tour, best of 3 would be or best of two or more rounds, or some kind of way to not to mitigate how swingy it is would be really nice.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I agree. Yeah, hopefully LSS can do something to make this format a little bit. I feel like a lot of the problems from this format can be solved with just doing that. And, maybe increase the match timer back to 55 minutes, best of three is so reasonable, right?
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I think even for a lot of the longer matchups, you can do this. Or if you're really worried about it, you can do best of two, and just do like a match points thing for you get like one win per match point, and or for sorry one match point per win kind of thing. So you can get 2 points if you win both, and 1 point if you win one.
Yeah, okay. That makes also I don't know if that's that great because then yeah, then it's like the same problem as best of one, right? Then you just need to keep 2-0ing or you're kind of dead.
Well, not everybody's going to be 2-0ing though.
Well, but then you would have to 2-0 if that makes sense, right? Like
Well, you'd have to 2-0 some of them, but like I don't know, if you play 5 rounds best of two, it's like you play 10 rounds, right?
okay, yeah, yeah, that is true. That is true. Yeah, that is true. That is true. Yeah, it is like you play 10 rounds. Okay, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah, but I think lots of different ways to fix the competitive side of Silver Age. The casual side of Silver Age is kind of great.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. Great for the game. Exactly what this looks like when you're playing for stakes, I think could use work. And that was sort of a sentiment I heard from a lot of our locals, anyways. I don't know. And some of the friends I have online talking about their experiences at PQs. I don't know what the general sentiment is. It's very hard to get a read on these things. But at least within my circles, there was a lot of, I don't mind Silver Age, but I'm not really sure about playing this for ProQuest. Was like it was okay, but it was maybe not didn't have as much competitive integrity as some prior PQs was like sort of the vibe that I got from people.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I agree. I agree. I've also heard the same. But at the same time, we do talk to the same kind of people. So,
Yes, yes. So yeah, honestly, like if you have different experiences or even similar experiences, that'd be interesting to hear about. So if you want to talk about that either in the Discord or message us on social media and let us know, leave it in the comments. That would all be really interesting to hear because again, like we kind of have the same, very similar spheres, and there's obviously a lot of other people out there. So yeah, I'm curious like what the general community sentiment on Silver Age at ProQuest is.
yeah. The other thing is like I feel like the new players don't even show up to the Pro Quest anyways, right? Like the people who aren't really trying to qualify, who aren't trying to play this game competitively, but like Sage, like still won't show up to these PQs. So like it doesn't feel like there's a need for these like higher variance tournaments.
Yeah, I mean, so I think having Silver Age in organized play is important because it kind of adds legitimacy to the format and it gives people a bridge. So you have people starting out with Sage right now that are just getting into the game for Sage, and maybe they're not playing PQs right now. But I think being able to, next season, if there are Sage PQs, I don't know if there will be or not, but if there were, it would be nice to have them be able to play that, or at some point in the future, be able to play Sage PQs and qualify that way and have showdowns there and maybe some callings. I think having like a format that extends into the organized play ecosystem, even if it is a smaller part, is probably good for the format. I think like Living Legend and like Commoner sort of had this issue where like they existed, but there just wasn't really like that many reasons to play them.
Okay, yeah. Okay. That's a really good point. Yeah. Commoner was a great format, but nobody played it because there wasn't a place to play it.
Yeah, so I think it doesn't have to be like 1/3 CC, 1/3 draft, 1/3 Silver Age. I think it could be like, I don't know, 10% Silver Age and then 30% draft and 60% CC or something like this. I don't know what the right mix is, but you could have some kind of mix like this. But I think having Silver Age be a small part of that is probably good.
Okay. That's pretty good. That's a pretty good take. I guess before we discuss our PQ week 1 data that we got, do you want to do a Patreon shout out?
Yeah, so I mentioned that we'd love to hear from you. And one of the ways to do that is through the Patreon Discord. So all of our patrons get access to the Discord. You can check that out at patreon.com/onthebobble. Check out the Discord as well as other content on there. And Also, if you're looking to buy singles, you can do so through Invasion, cnc.ca, one of the largest Canadian retailers. And if you're buying singles through them, you can use code YLB5 to let them know that we sent you there. And that also helps support the show. But yeah, those are ways you can give back to the show. And we just want to say that we really appreciate everybody who does give back to the show in any way that they're able to. And we also appreciate our listeners who aren't able to give back to the show but tune in regularly. It's just honestly great to have the engagement that we get and go to events and say hi to people and all of that. It's why we do this, and it makes the show possible. So thank you so much to all of our listeners and all of our patrons. We couldn't be doing what we're doing without you.
Awesome. Okay, perfect. Yeah, PQ week 1 data. Man, there's two really big outliers. Briar and KO getting a total of 90 wins of the 150 events that happened on week 1. Maybe there's a little bit more than 150, but when we tally up all of the total wins, there's just over 150.
It should be 180. It should be like 180, around 180, just under, because Briar and KO make up 50. Oh no, it's more than that, 56%. Okay, yeah, about 150.
Yeah, 150. But like 90 total wins on these two heroes is a crazy outlier, right? Like these two decks, I guess, is that much stronger than everything else.
Yeah, I think there's a combination of them being stronger. I think there's a combination of them being relatively straightforwards to play as well. Like Kano is in fourth at 13 wins, and Kano has done really well at the calling and showdown circuits, but I think that Kano is pretty tough to play. Also, the aggro decks are tough matchups for you. So if there's a bunch of aggro decks running around, it's like a little bit, you can win them, but they're a little bit more flippy. And so I think that maybe in the hands of Jacob Clements, who has taken down a showdown and a calling, Kano's looking like he might be the best deck. But I think at the PQ level, Briar and KO being more approachable and picking up more wins makes a lot of sense. Also, just more representation, I think. At least at our PQ, we had two Kanos, myself, and one other, whereas I think we had like, I don't even know, like 4 or 5 KOs, and I think similar for Briar as well.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, we had like the double the amount of Briars and KOs as versus Kanos. Yeah, it's just like it's so easy to play these aggro decks, right? You just like 0 for 4, 0 for 4, 0 for 4. And it's like kind of hard to go wrong with these aggro decks. And KO in particular, like its aggressive cards don't even block. So like you can't even make the mistake of accidentally blocking with it.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think these are like really solid choices, and them doing well at PQs makes sense. It kind of matches the calling data, what we talked about last week. And yeah, I don't think I expected them to be 56% combined. That is maybe the most, what's the word? I think this might be the highest win share two decks has seen in a ProQuest season. Like even linking back to Starvo, we had like Starvo, Chain, Viscera, Prism. I don't think two decks were making up 56%. I think like the 4 decks were making up like 75% or something. But yeah, 2 decks making up 56%. I don't actually know if I've seen this in Flesh and Blood before, and it's a little surprising. It's possible that somewhere too. Like I didn't fact check this. I'm just like thinking off the top of my head, and I actually can't think of another meta where I saw this.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen this either. Because when I looked at the what are these things called? Infographics? Yeah, when I looked at the infographics from the FabTCG Twitter page, they're just like, wow, like that's more than half. It's like a huge chunk of Briar, a huge chunk of KO. I was pretty surprised to see it being this lopsided. I would have expected like a little bit more other decks to like kind of shine through, because like Silver Age is a format where you do get to play basically any hero in the game. Like every hero, every young hero that's common or rare is legal. So yeah, I was very surprised. But I really don't think this data is going to shift next week, right? For week 2 of ProQuests. I'm like, I still think Briar is gonna overperform. I still think KO is gonna overperform. So I feel like they're just gonna like double down on these numbers and just like accumulate more wins.
I think so too. I think it's also the case that like I don't really think there is a clear counter to these two decks. So I don't know how much like targeting there's going to be. And I also think that the season's just very short, right? Like we have one more week and that's it. And then there's a BNR. So I know that for a lot of people prepping for the Pro Tour, it's sort of like maybe you're doing some Silver Age prep so you can hope to win your PQ and qualify for Vegas. But outside of that, it's not like there's almost more interest in Classic Constructed right now because it feels like the bigger thing to solve. And Silver Age feels both like it's kind of been the shape of the metagame has been like fairly figured out, and then there's a BNR coming up in a week on the second. So like immediately following the end of PQs, there's a BNR, and then I think I expect things will shift when we see things this lopsided. But yeah, I think that there's sort of like both not much time and not much, I guess, incentive for the metagame to like develop more.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. Do you have an expectation on what's going to get hit on the BNR here?
I'm not totally sure. Haven't thought too much about it. I guess like for Briar, Sigil of Suffering kind of stands out as a crazy card that both can just kill you on their turn and is a 5 point card on defense if you're not able to AB. And even if you are able to AB, it's often a 4 point card. It depends on like how the resources shake out, but yeah, that stuff. And like also just presenting AB into Briar is like not always something that you want to do. So there's kind of just like a lot of problems created by that card.
Yeah, I agree with you. Do you know a card that I think they need to ban from KO?
What's that?
It's Manable Clause. I think Manable Clause just creates so much like free value in KO that like I think we can just get rid of that card, and
That's
I
fair.
feel like their ceiling kind of gets cut off. Where that's the problem with KO is when they go like Wild Ride, Manable Claw, Bear Fang, like, and it's so free to do so.
Yeah, I could see Mandible Claw. Yeah, it's like a little hard to know exactly what to hit from KO because a lot of the cards are really redundant. I guess you could hit like Bear Fangs or Savage Feast as kind of like cards that feel a little bit like power outliers, or maybe Beaten Trackers are too good for the format. Honestly, yeah, Beaten Trackers are kind of crazy when I think about it. There's like no Snapdragons, but you have Battle War in one, get an action pretty much on demand. Like it makes all your Bear Fangs and Savage Feast into effective go again cards, and you have enough go again in the deck that between those and that, and if you play Buck Wilds and Wild Rides, you could just pretty effortlessly chain together go again. You can brick; it is definitely possible to brick, but yeah, very consistent go again in that deck. And I think maybe hitting that in some way, Mandible Claw could be a good way to do that. Would be good.
Yeah, and then the third most performing deck, I guess, was Decimator, Great Axe, Doranthea. Yeah, that makes just sense. Like, Decimator, Great Axe is just really good card. Felling Swing, really, really good card. So, yeah, these four decks that we talked about, Briar, KO, Doranthea, and Kano, taking up, what is this, 56, 66, 74. So, basically 75% of the metagame share. Yeah, it looks like this format is solidifying into a four deck format.
Yeah, it seems so. And then there's like I guess like Ira at 9 wins, and then pretty big fall off to like 5 and 4 wins for Showman and Enigma. But yeah, I think a lot of what we talked about, like these kind of four decks being really good, and you can play Ninja, you can play Guardian, you can play Enigma, but I think they might have a few more problems compared to some of these other decks.
Yeah, I feel like they're just more susceptible of not having a functional hand.
Yeah.
And whereas like Briar and KO is like kind of just like better at converting their hands.
Yeah, I agree. And I think they're like a little more flexible. Like it feels like they're able to block and play good 2 card hands. And sometimes the other decks are like this too, but I often think that blocking is not good in this format. Whereas like that's like one of the things that stood out to me about Briars. I think because of the embodiments of Earth, it's just like you're this crazy aggro deck, and then sometimes you're just like, oh, this burn up shock's not good in this hand. Block four. And it's like very, very impressive that the deck is able to kind of play both sides so effectively.
I agree. Okay, I think that's enough about Silver Age. If you are playing a Silver Age PQ, good luck. I think if you're playing any of the top four decks, I don't think you're doing anything wrong. But our main focus today is gonna be the calling for Montreal, which is a classic constructed. And this is gonna be, is this the first calling constructed major that's gonna happen since pen release?
Yeah, so this is very much the first look at CC. There's obviously Talishar data to go off of, but basically no stats whatsoever. So it's going to be an interesting event, and I think really will set the stage for week 1 of CC PQs, which is coming up, I guess, about a week from when this episode will come out.
You said you've been testing CC. Do you have a spicy deck that you're going to bring, or do you think it's pretty much like in the open at this point?
Um, I thought I was going to be playing Bolton. The deck has really impressed me. We can talk more about Bolton when we get there, but then the Acilio matchup turned out to be a fair bit worse than I thought that it was, and so I might not be playing Bolton, and I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to play instead. I might just be playing Katsu as a deck that beats up Acilio, and we can talk about Katsu in the Metacall section, but I think that Katsu is potentially an interesting deck for this weekend and pretty well positioned.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough. Okay, then for the CC meta, what do you think is still going to be good from, let's say, the old meta game? Do you think the decks that were good before Pen are still good?
I think it's a bit of a mixed bag. Maybe the deck to start with, in my opinion, is we'll get to Phi. I know Phi has been like a bit of a hot topic, but I think the deck to start with is actually Acilio. Acilio was already very good and saw some decent tournament success. We saw Majin Bay make top four. There might have even been two Acilios in that top eight. I'm not sure, but yeah, we've seen Acilio do well. And Acilio got a huge pickup in the set in the form of Temporal Wobble. This is the zero cost red instant, and basically you can negate a target non attack action so long as it costs less than the number of sigils that you control. And Acilio already wants to play a bunch of sigils. Sigil of Conductivity stays in play, so if you have at least one sigil in play or a sigil in hand that you can play and then play Temporal Wobble, you can basically counterspell their card. And because it's an instant, you can also cycle it away with Acilio. This card, I wasn't exactly sure how strong it would be, but after having seen it more, I kind of just feel like this card is actually a really big mistake and a pretty problematic card. I think Acilio is in a state where I sort of expect him to see bans before the Pro Tour, is how I would put it. The reason for this is that, for one, Wobble counters Amulet of Echoes, as well as most of the hate pieces that previously kept Acilio in check. And Acilio was already a good deck with a bunch of decks playing three Amulet of Echoes into him. But you can just, it has to line up, but you have free counter magic against it. It also counters things like Spark of Genius or um, any Null Time Zone, any of those cards. You can hit Codex of Frailty, so your Marionette matchup improves dramatically. If you're trying to play Kasai into Acilio, your Amulet plan is worse, but you can also get something like an Unsheathed counterspelled and then lose your Go again, and that's a ton of value. So, like Lumina, Ascension, and Bolton, the list goes on and on. There's just so many powerful non-attack action cards, and you kind of have this card that both hits the hate piece, that the generic hate piece that most decks had in their deck for you, as well as typically hits one of your power cards. There's probably matchups where you don't want to play it, and there's also matchups where it is high risk, like into KO, for example. You can play this to hit Blood Rush Bellow, and you do need two sigils in play. But if you counterspell their Blood Rush Bellow, they still have to discard as an additional cost, and you probably win the game on the spot. So, yeah, this card has some, in my opinion, some pretty poor play patterns associated with it, and I also think it makes Acilio into kind of a monster because the card keeping him in check doesn't. He has a very real out to now. Plus, that card just does a bunch of other stuff in a whole bunch of matchups.
Okay, yeah, that's pretty fair. This card used to exist as like rewind before, right? Where the player got the card back, but now it just negates it and actually gets rid of it. That's a pretty big difference.
It is hugely different, and there's no real counterplay to it either. Like it's not like you can pay resources and then it doesn't get counterspelled. It's just a hard negate that just completely, it just cancels out the non-attack action, which is really tough.
Okay, I actually don't know the ruling on this. I don't know if you know the ruling on this. If you destroy all their sigils in response, does the card still get countered if they have, let's say, like zero sigils to your zero cost?
That's a really good question. I actually also don't know the answer to this question.
Let me look this up right now, real quick.
But regardless, I don't think this is a form of counterplay that many decks have, but it is an interesting question. But while Jay is looking this up, I think that Acilio is probably the best deck in the format at the moment. And I think a lot of things get there are other impacts that Compendium has as well. We'll talk about those, but I think like one of the biggest changes right now is that Acilio is kind of unlocked. I feel like there was a lot of decks you could play that didn't have a good Acilio matchup on paper, but you throw in 3 Amulet of Echoes and it's kind of serviceable. Like Kasai was in this category, Gravy's in this category, where without Amulet of Echoes, I think you're maybe like sub 20% against a good Acilio, but you throw in 3 Amulet of Echoes, you hit them as hard as you can, you try to play your amulets, and you like might have like a 40%er. It's not good, but it's playable. And I think that is, I don't know how the percentage has changed with Wobble, but it's gotten quite a bit worse for a lot of decks.
Okay, I actually couldn't find the answer to my question. For Temporal Wobble, I actually don't know. We'll have to ask a judge. If you have ways to destroy sigils on at instant speed, I don't know if there is that many of them, so...
Yeah, the main one I think of is like you can Strider's Scour, I guess, but even that just seems hard to come up.
Yeah.
And if your Wobble trades for your Scour and Striders, that's like also pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. That is kind of ridiculous.
Not exactly. Yeah, it's not exactly a huge amount of downside to the card. So if there is counterplay, it's like not super meaningful.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Do you think this is the best deck in the format right now?
I think it probably is. I think arguably I should be playing Acilio this weekend. I don't have that many reps on the deck. I also don't really love playing this deck, so I'm not sure that I don't think I will end up playing it at least for this weekend, but I think that Acilio is very likely the best deck right now.
Okay, that's very fair. That's very fair.
Oh, I should also say that this is maybe at the like day 2 calling PT level. I think that the difference between a really strong Acilio and a competent Acilio is kind of drastic. Like if you go back and watch some of Majin Bei's games on Acilio that were in coverage, you see what that deck can do, and it's like, holy smokes. Some of this is within that context. So I think that for PQs, I expect Acilio was already a solid deck. I expect him to probably do better because I think Temporal Wobble just does make the deck better in the hands of anybody. But I think it might be like a bit of a Gravy Bones, where like Gravy Bones was a good deck in PQs, but when you played the Pro Tour, you were like, oh, this is the deck. And I think Acilio might be similar, where he's good at PQs, but maybe not completely stifling. But I think when you get to the top of competitive play, he will probably, in the hands of people who have really put in the time, I think he will be a monster.
Okay, that's a really good take. I think Acilio does seem like a deck. Maybe we just need more sideboard cards to try and beat Acilio. I don't know what that means, but yeah, I'm curious to try and play into Acilio. The deck that I'm on right now is still Huntsman, and the Acilio matchup, at least for now, hasn't been my biggest worries. So maybe with Temporal Wobble, I need to try this matchup again and see how this matchup goes now.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know much about the Huntsman Acilio matchup either.
We'll move on and talk about the next deck, Mario. So Arachne Marionette. This deck was strong, is strong, and but it didn't really get any new cards from Pen, right?
Yeah, not really. I think there's like the Tome of Pandemonium, which is like the tome that it's banishes to. It's like a yellow 1 cost, banish 1 card from each player's deck, and you can play them this turn. This is a kind of high variance card. I think that this card is probably not for most matchups, but probably is good in the mirror, which arguably just makes the deck worse if you have a card that you have to play in the mirror, and then it just takes sideboard slots for other matchups. But yeah, that's kind of like the main card that I think you could include in Marionette, but otherwise, the deck is basically the same. Marionette's still good. I wasn't sure if he would keep up with Fi. He keeps up just fine with Fi. That matchup's pretty close. Used to be quite good into Acilio if you were playing Amulets. I think that matchup is actually pretty close now because they can wobble not only Amulet, but Orb Weaver, Spinneret, or Codex, or Saber Bloodshed, and all of those are quite nasty. So I think this matchup's gotten a lot closer, but you're still fine. So I think that if you are somebody that has a lot of reps in Mario, you can keep playing Mario. That deck is still great. Yeah, I think Mario is still very much a top deck, and I think if you're playing Acilio or Mario, you're probably making a good choice.
Yeah, the Assassin still just has the Leave Note, Witness, Codex of Frailty, and like these cards are just so good with Command and Conquer if you want to play that. So Yeah, Assassins just has the disruption to beat the aggro decks, and it does kind of feel like an aggro heavy CC meta right now. That's at least that's the take that I'm getting right now.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same. And I think Mario kind of just is an aggro deck, but it's an aggro deck that has a bit of disruption, which makes it line up pretty decently into a lot of the other aggro decks. Yeah, he can just, Marionette is more than capable of just, you know, Saber Bloodshed, up sticks and run, Chelicera for 10 go again, and then they like double to the pointed and it's for like 18. And you're just like, okay, like sure. These things happen all the time with this deck. So its ceiling is super high, and it can also, I would say it's like a aggro deck with like a splash of disruption is kind of how it feels.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. This is a deck that I'm surprised that you put on here. KO? Do you think KO is back in the top tier decks?
I think KO's probably not top tier, but I think he's probably still fine. By far, your worst matchup was Florian. That's gone. And you are pretty solid into Acilio. I think they basically just need to pray and try and blow up your Blood Rush Bellow, but you do a ton of damage and you have Disruption, which are the two things that Acilio doesn't like, and you are mostly attack actions. So I think that this is a little bit hypothetical, but I think KO is still good into Acilio and okay into Marionette, and that is like a fine place to be. I think KO's probably kind of where he was. He's like not an S tier deck, but he's like a decent A tier deck that you can play. And I think he's probably gotten a little bit relatively better positioned with Florian leaving the format, and then I guess the next two decks on here, Verdance and Gravy, that we'll talk about. I think these decks are not going to be as represented as they were at one point in time.
That's fair. That's fair. I feel like the sentiment that I've been hearing about Verdance right now is that the deck is kind of fallen off and is easier to beat, is kind of like what I'm kind of hearing. I'm not really sure why that's the case. Is it just like the other deck's ceiling has gotten so high at this point that like Virtus can't really keep up with playing its like fair 2 card game?
Yeah, I think that the decks are pretty explosive. I think losing Rootbound has hurt the deck's consistency. You do get to play Elemental Strike as it's not a decompose card, but you can banish an Earth card, which does mean your first felling can come online for 8 if you Elemental Strike first. So in that sense, it's kind of like an extra decompose. Often in these aggro matchups, you actually don't care that much about getting online, and it's more about getting your Fellings and Plowanders to attack for full value. So there are some tools that she got, but yeah, she seems a little bit on the fair side. I think Gravy's also going to be lesser represented. We'll talk about why, and that is a bit of a win for Verdance. And I will give the caveat that Verdance, despite me being low on her, I think has a 60% win rate on Talishard right now for Compendium, which is super, super high. And I also suspect that for PQs, Verdance will be quite good. Verdance just does good numbers, does good stuff. Felling is still a really powerful card. And I think that I don't expect her to do really well going into like day 2 of the calling, for example. But I think at the Pro Quest level, she will still be a deck that performs and picks up a decent number of wins.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. I think I'm also on that line there. You know, if you don't have a plan against burn bears and light up the leaves, you do just lose just to those cards.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, what do you do, right? Like, if you don't have like enough AB or an Oasis Respite in your deck, I don't know how you can ever beat Verdant sometimes. So, unless you aggro her out, which is kind of tough too, because she blocks pretty well.
Yeah, I think she's just the kind of deck where if you're missing a few points on some of your turn cycles, or you fall into the trap of playing small hands against Verdance, like you're on a 4 card hand, she fellings you, and you just like take 8 to send back 8, and then you're suddenly in this hole. I think that Verdance has a lot of play patterns that really exploit what the opponent's doing. And despite me being lower on her, she was a top tier deck not very long ago, and I don't think she is that far off. I just think that in the hands of really good players who are very experienced against Verdance, she loses a lot of equity, and she is an okay choice, but not one I'm personally terribly excited about playing. But I do think she's a good PQ choice, especially depending on your local metagame. Like if you have a lot of good Verdance matchups, that's great. And if you start to see like Guardians and things like that creep back in, Verdance is really good into those decks. So yeah, Verdance has reasons to exist, but I don't think that she is a top tier deck at the moment.
Then the next deck to talk about will be Gravy Bones. I guess to start, we'll start by talking about the rules change. With the release of Compendium to Rathe, there has been a rule change with ally attacks. So previously, ally attacks meant that whenever you attack with an ally, that the ally was attacking the hero, and it wasn't Gravy Bones attacking the hero. And with the rule change, now basically any kind of attack that you're generating is an attack that you are doing now. So for example, the clash cards with Guardian, like test the strength, will now clash on a Guardian attack. And this is a huge plus or a huge change for exactly Victor, who weren't able to clash with Gravy a lot of the times when they drew their clash cards, and a huge upside for Arachne Huntsman for Hunted or Hunter, where that also didn't work with ally attacks, but now does. So Gravy lost a lot of points being able to just kind of attack for free into Victor with their allies.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not sure if Victor's matchup is fantastic at the moment, but I into Gravy, but it is much better than it's been. So that is a pretty big deal.
Yeah, well, I think it's a huge difference because before I would have cut the block cards into Gravy because it was like too big of a liability to just play like a red 4 block that wasn't a D react that didn't do anything. Unless like you happen to draw it on the turn they draw exactly Conquer. And what is that 3 block card? Trounce?
Counts. Yeah.
Yeah, and Trounce was just like atrociously bad. Like you draw that card into Gravy, you're just like, oh wow, like this card just doesn't do anything. It's like a 3 block card that is red. Like that's it's just like beyond bad.
Yeah. 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 So I think that is a big improvement to Victor's Gravy matchup. I think it's probably still unfavored, but it went from I think almost unwinnable to at least playable. So that's a pretty big deal.
I actually think that it went from like unwinnable to maybe like even like 40%, something in that
Yeah,
range.
yeah.
Um, the problem in that Gravy Victor matchup was the amount of gold generation that you had in your deck got reduced. Like they you Gravy just got to like remove 6 gold from Victor from their deck, which is, Gravy needs gold to operate. Victor also needs gold to operate, and yeah, getting that gold back is pretty big. But against the best Gravy players, it's still not good.
Yeah, yeah, I feel similarly about that matchup. So yeah, that's Gravy. I think the text that it cares about is like something to do with attacking hero. It specifically wants to look for the text of the like if there is an attacking hero, those cards now work against allies, whereas they previously didn't. But yeah, Gravy Bones. I think Gravy's gotten worse. We'll see. I feel like the Gravy players. I feel like we've said this before, and the Gravy players always find a way. So I could be proven wrong, and it wouldn't shock me. There's some very talented Gravy players out there, and maybe specialists can still make the deck sing. That being said, Verdance is less represented. That was a good matchup for you. Acilio is a very tough matchup for you, and your main out was Amulet of Echoes, and they now have Wobble for that. That also hits other cards, so they're not really going to get stranded with it. And yeah, I'm also just like not sure that like Phi. I don't think Phi is fantastic for you. It's okay. It's fine, but basically, I just don't. You have a good Marionette matchup, but outside of that, I don't see a lot of reasons to play Gravy Bones. Is kind of how I feel. Like there's not a lot of decks where I'm like, yes, this is the deck that Gravy Bones preys on in this metagame. I'm not really seeing that at the moment.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Like Gravy Bones is like, I think, not naturally weak to, but like historically a little bit a dog into the very aggressive leaning decks. And as we said at the beginning of this discussion, like the format is leaning very aggressive right now.
Yeah. So I think Gravy Bones is fine. He's still a powerful hero. He still does very powerful things. Really, really good gravies might be able to make the deck work, but I think he is no longer in that top tier status. And I expect him to probably pick up some wins, but be like in that kind of A tier category now.
Yeah, that makes sense. We want to move on to Kasai. Kasai was doing very, very well maybe like 2 months ago, but I haven't heard about Kasai for a little bit now. Like, what happened to her?
I think that Florian cropped up and was a terrible matchup for her. And Florian has LL'd, which you would think would be good for Kasai. The problem is, we talked about Acilio and Wobble being really good into Kasai in your plan. I think if your plan into Acilio revolved around Amulet of Echoes, I don't know exactly how many win percentage points you lost, but you lost a lot. And Kasai is one of those decks. Kasai is also just a deck that has a whole bunch of non-attack actions that are good, like they get rid of Unshees or they get rid of Blood on Your Hands, like you probably just lose the game. So I think that matchup has to be bad now. I haven't spent a ton of time on it, but I don't even want to play it, honestly. I think your Marionette matchup was already not fantastic. And I have played the Fi matchup. That matchup is really, really bad as well. Fi just wants to have one like 35 damage turn. You don't really have disruption, and you don't have enough pressure to prevent that turn from happening, and you kind of just it feels like Kasai is in a decent place and kind of ahead, and then Fi plays Art of War, pops links, and you just explode.
Welcome to Fi. Yeah, we get that classic Fi gameplay again.
Yeah, yeah. So maybe with Fi brought down a notch, and maybe if Acilio isn't quite as good as I think he is, I can maybe see an argument for Kasai. But at the moment, I think you just have a few too many bad matchups, and not again like I'm not sure. Like you had a good Gravy matchup, but Gravy's gotten worse, and I'm just looking at Kasai here, and I'm just like, man, I don't know what deck I'm hoping to target with Kasai. Is how I feel. She's a fine deck. She does some decent things, but she just doesn't seem well positioned.
I agree. I agree. And then the last deck on the old deck section we have here is Pleiades. So I haven't seen a Fatigue Pleiades list in a little bit. What happened to this deck?
My take is this deck was a bit of a flash in a pan, and sort of captured a moment where it was a novel thing, caught some people off guard, and as people got reps into it, it lost some of its edge. And I think that Acilio is one of the decks that has a pretty reasonable plan to go over you, especially when you can't rely on Bell as much. Amulet. Marionette, I think, was a pretty reasonable deck into you. That's another represented deck that we talked about. KO was a decent deck into you. And similarly, I haven't played the Fi Pleiades matchup. I don't really know what Pleiades is going to do in Defy to stop the giant turn. You just don't have that much disruption, and even if you do disrupt, you probably can't disrupt turn over turn. And that feels like what you need to do against Fi. You need to just keep him off big hands or kill him in 2 turns. And if you're not doing one of those two things, I can't really see it being good. You kind of need like a combination of damage plus disruption. That's really like the recipe for success this format. Either you kill people in 2 turns or you do damage plus disruption.
Okay, yeah. So Pleiades Fatigue deck. You just want to move on from it. I there's not much to talk about Pleiades other than that, right? Like I wasn't really a fan of this deck to begin with. It just like didn't appeal to me in the sense of like I like fatigue decks a lot usually, but this deck didn't really appeal to me the same way that other fatigue decks did. It just doesn't have enough disruption, right? Like that's kind of my take is like typically when I'm playing Guardians, I kind of like to play like Spinal Crushes and all of these like cards that are good into Fi and I know, like, and Pleiades still a Guardian, so maybe the matchup's like not too bad if you get to crush the weak enough times. But yeah, I kind of don't know why I'd want to be playing Pleiades right now. If I'm gonna play a Guardian, actually, maybe I just talk about this later. Yeah, we'll talk about Victor later.
Yeah, I think Victor is quite good, but yeah, we can touch on him later when we get there. So I think this pretty much wraps up the decks from last meta. There's maybe Dio. We'll get to Dio later. But yeah, let's go on to new decks that got cards in Compendium of Rathe that we think are good. So first off, Fi. Fi got Art of War. My take is that Art of the Phoenix War is actually worse than Art of War. In like a kind of meaningful way that I didn't think it was when I first read the card. It being red in conjunction with the card you banish has to be or discard has to be a Phoenix Flame ends up being significant downside because basically if this card is in your hand, you basically have to either arsenal it or resolve it. And because it's a red, you don't have the out of like pitching it to Emberblade. So when this card is bad, it can be quite clunky. I think there's also a problem of sometimes you can double Art of War, but you need a pretty specific hand. Like in particular, you need like a Flame Call Awakening or a Rise from the Ashes, some way to get a second Phoenix Flame. And this means that sitting on the Art of War and sculpting for a really good hand is sometimes dangerous because you can just drop into the second Art of War and then you basically have to resolve one of them. Otherwise, you're just IPing this red instant in your hand. So I think that there is meaningful downside to this card. That being said, it's still really powerful, and I think the other cards that Fi got in the set are also powerful. Fire that burns within the discarded Phoenix Flame, it becomes a leg tap that draws a card. That card's really impressive, and the 0 for 4 go again if you have 4 Draconic Chain Links is also really really impressive. So I think Fi is really good. I was worried that Fi would be like best deck in format good. I think he is just a good deck. I think he is maybe slightly worse than Mario and Acilio, maybe about the same as them, somewhere in that range. I think he's probably like a little better than KO, and yeah.
Yeah, I think Fi has a lot more weaknesses than the other aggro decks in my opinion. It's a little bit easier to attack Fi with like sideboard cards than like let's say Mario.
He's really fragile. He doesn't block well. He wants to keep his hands and he wants to blow you up with one big hand. And I think maybe more so than ever, Fi feels very rigid in how he can be built in the cards that you include. And you just have a lot of 2 blocks. You need lots of cards in hand. And yeah, if you disrupt him, he has a bad time.
Right now I'm playing like Bonds of Attraction Blue and Huntsman, and man, that card is a house.
Yeah, the targeting the Phoenix Flames is really real. This is probably the reason the Gravy Fi matchup isn't terrible. Is like Sunken Treasure flipping a flame is a pretty big problem. This is a lot of the reason why the Patreon list that I released a bit ago is on the Flame Call Awakening, so that you have more redundancy with your Phoenix Flames and you can counter some of these hate pieces. But you still only have 3 Phoenix Flames, and you often kind of want 2 for your Rise from the Ashes. So yeah, getting your flames banished or flipped or put to the bottom of your deck or whatever with like Everbloom Life, all of these things hurt Fi a fair bit.
Yeah, I was actually surprised because when Fi was first a deck when Uprising came out, there was just like no way to attack this Phoenix Flame in a meaningful way. But since then, that we've got a lot of graveyard hate or like small ways to interact with people's graveyards that are actually so punishing for Fi. And you start with like an Everbloom Life, like the game feels kind of over for Fi unless they draw a Flame Call Awakening to get back the Phoenix Flame, right?
So yeah, I think that there's ways to beat Fi. I don't think he's overwhelming, but I do think he's really good. And I don't want to say he has the highest ceiling. Acilio might have a higher ceiling, but Fi is a very high ceiling, and left to his own devices is incredibly consistent. So yeah, Fi's numbers are crazy. Doesn't always have the most agency or flexibility in his game plans, though.
I have a feeling that Fi is going to be one of those decks that are going to overperform maybe calling Montreal. It's going to overperform week 1 PQs and then start to drop off as people put in the sideboard cards for him.
I think I would agree with you, except that I think he's just going to hit Living Legend. I think this deck's around for like 2 weeks.
Is he at 800 points or something?
Something. I think he's at more than this. Let me get the exact number of points. He's also at 1.5x multiplier, so those points are going to go by really quick. Yeah, he's at 821, so he needs 180 points at 1.5x multiplier. I think there's basically no way that he survives the PQ season with how powerful he is kind of my read. I kind of expect him to last about exactly 2 weeks.
Man, that's kind of depressing. Like, yeah, I kind of wish he's going to be legal for PT Yokohama. Just like increase the number of aggro decks in the format is good for me. So
this seems like good criteria to base this on.
Yeah, I want aggro decks in the format. That's my hope. Is I don't want mid range decks. I don't want control decks to be running around. I just want like red line aggro decks to just be running around. That's my hope, you know. Like,
Hmm.
we're gonna talk about Huntsman soon, but man, Huntsman is so good into these red line decks right now.
So that's enough about Phi. Let's go on to the other aggro deck that got tools this format, Bolton. I think that Bolton is really good. The tile share data on it is pretty sad, but I think that there's a combination of maybe decks not being optimized, and I think Bolton is actually just a very, very challenging deck to play. Your soul management is incredibly important and can be incredibly punishing. So understanding when you're supposed to go down on soul to convert to, let's say, like a Raiden swing, when you're supposed to keep soul for a bigger play is all really important and really crucial to the deck functioning. Also, like managing your courages so that you have go again on your next turn and you don't brick on go again. There's just like lots of ways that Bolton can get punished. That being said, I think I said it at the start of this episode. Bolton's Acilio matchup is a problem, and I think that's going to hold him back at least for now. In the event that Wobble leaves, I think Bolton could be good. If your area is low in Acilios, I think Bolton could be good. I think he's pretty solid into basically the rest of the field, but you have a tough Acilio matchup, and that makes this deck. I don't want to say that it makes it bad, but it makes it less attractive, at least for me.
Okay, that's pretty fair. So, what's the card that Bolton got that made this deck kind of good in this format?
He got a lot of pieces. I think the most obvious one is Duty Bound Blitz. This is a 0 for 5 go again at red, and you can play the yellows as a 0 for 4 go again. It does have the condition that a yellow card needs to have entered your soul this turn, but that's not that big of a condition. It is real, but it's like pretty small with how Bolton decks are built.
Yeah, so if you've charged this turn, you get to attack with a 0 for 5 go again.
Well, yeah, if you've charged a yellow, but also it being a yellow card going to soul is relevant because I think another card that he got is Blessing of Bologna. This is a yellow aura that says whenever a card goes to your soul, you make a courage, and at the start of your next turn, it goes to your soul and makes a courage because it sees itself. This card has sped up Bolton's early game. Sometimes he has a problem with needing to build up soul and taking too long to do that. Blessing of Bologna goes to soul is effectively like at least a 0 for 2 if you charge it. It can be more than that because it can make extra courages from Lumina, Ascension, or his armor. And also notably, this is a yellow card going to your soul, so this enables Duty Bound Blitz. So I've had chargerless hands that have a Blessing of Bologna on board and go like Snatch for 5 with a courage, Duty Bound Blitz, Duty Bound Blitz. And pretty good hand.
Yeah, that sounds disgusting. That's what. Assuming all the cards are red, it's 5 5 5, 3 card 15.
Yeah, with draw card effect, or you could do the snatch at the end if you want to save on soul. You have some options, but yeah, I think that's another card. Roaring Beam, I won't get into it, but yeah, this can make a whole bunch of courages on turn 0. Blessing of Blown is also a good turn 0 play. So basically, Bolton had this problem of too much ramp up time, and I think between Roaring Beam, Blessing of Bologna, and Duty Bound Blitz, that ramp up time goes down a lot. Duty Bound Blitz, because it has innate go again, means you don't have to spend a soul on it to present an extra chain link. So in this sense, it helps your soul not directly, but it helps it by not taxing it, I guess.
Okay, that's an interesting way of thinking about that. Yeah, and have you seen the Boltons like the top end of Bolton's turns with the V of the Vanguard? It's so disgusting with duty bound Brits now.
Yeah, he's just very good at doing like 25, 30 damage via the Vanguard turns. He has the Lumina turns. It felt like before the deck had. I played this deck at Nationals, and it felt like when you drew the good hands, the deck was great, but it had a little bit too much air. You still can draw hands that are air, like all Charger hands are usually not great. But with Duty Bound Blitz, you just have so much more threat density that yeah, he is honestly really, really impressive. I was very close to playing Bolton for Montreal, and I think if the Acilio matchup were like 40%, I would probably be playing it, but I think it is worse than that. So
Okay, that's a pretty. I thought I was think you were talking about Celio maybe being like, yeah, like 40% or something, but yeah, you think it's worse than 40%.
I think it might be, yeah.
Okay, and you don't think you can just like cut down on these like non-attack actions to try and beat Wobble?
I mean, like Lumina Ascension's the best card in your deck, and I think that the matchup was good for you before because you could tutor for Amulet with Beacon of Victory. So if you played like 2 Amulet of Echoes, you effectively had 5 copies of the card. So you kind of had like the Dio thing going on, where you have a whole bunch of damage, and then you have a lot of outs to draw a hate piece. But now that he can wobble your hate piece and can also wobble Lumina, which is one of your faster ways to kill him, I think that matchup has gotten a fair bit worse.
Okay, that's pretty fair. That's pretty fair. Um. Okay. Anything else about Bolton? Oh, yeah, there is one more thing about Bolton I do want to talk about. Silver Age Season 3 got announced for Bolton. So Bolton is getting a Silver Age deck, and Bolton wasn't really a deck in Silver Age, but in June, when we get the Stage 3 of the Silver Age decks, Duskbane becomes a rare. So we get to play Bolton with his weapon.
I heard that the Raiden downshift is actually effective immediately or after
No,
PK season. No, is that not
no,
true?
June 5th. It's gonna be effective June 5th. I think his name was Josh. Let me
Josh
double.
Scott.
Yeah, Josh Scott made a post on the Judge Discord saying that Blaze and Raiden will be a rare as of June 5th and not legal in Sage as of now.
Okay, interesting. Good to know.
If you look at the FabPCG website on their like the beta, what is that called? Like the card list thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure what it's actually called, but on there it says it's a rare because there's like not a glitch, but there's a bug where it just like scrapes all the data from like what's currently there and then shows you that it's legal in Sage already because the card list for Raiden as a rare is now on that page.
That makes sense. That makes sense. So, yeah, that's Bolton.
Yeah, don't play Bolton next week and present Raiden because that would be bad. But you know, in a couple of months, we'll be able to get Bolton in Sage.
Yeah. So that's a hero that's interesting. GD Bound Blitz is a hell of a card, and you get warrior equipment, which is really good. So yeah, maybe I did try brewing Bolton, and it felt not quite good enough because you had to play like I think Beaming Blade was your best weapon at the moment, or at least that's what I thought. And Beaming Blade is it's kind of bad. So yeah.
Yeah, that's not close.
Yeah, so Raiden's a pretty big upgrade for Bolton, and yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I'm not sure yet, but he could be interesting afterwards. All right, let's move on to our next deck, one that I know you like a lot, Arachne Huntsman. Huntsman got quite a few new cards. What are some of the new cards, and what do you think of Huntsman right now?
I Okay, I don't know if Huntsman will be tier 1, but I think Huntsman is like a very real deck now that people can bring to events and probably like do well, get deep day 2 now. The biggest card that Huntsman got is Excessive Blood Loss. This card really targets the red line decks, but against the red line decks, we were missing kind of ways to generate pressure, and Excessive Blood Loss just kind of does that. I guess I'll read Excessive Blood Loss. So Excessive Blood Loss reads, it's a 1 cost, 5 attack, 3 block assassin attack action, and it says your contract to banish opponent's red cards, and then you make silvers. When this hits a hero, banish top card of their deck. If it's red, repeat this process once. So this against red line decks generates 2 silvers on hit, and because it attacks for 5, it's probably going to hit against the red line decks. And with combination with the new cycle of equipments that you get to equip from your graveyard and starts blocking for 2, this excessive blood loss against the red line decks is essentially a 1 for 7. So that's like a huge stat line on a card. And better than that, it's like a 1 for 7 that works defensively that also walks down your opponent's life total. So I can see if the format allows it, we can be playing even Rainbow Excessive Blood Loss because the card that it cares about banishing is always red on this card, no matter which color you play.
Yeah. Excessive Blood Loss has been really, really impressive and can really. I think the other thing is just burn through a lot of cards from your deck. You can play this off of Tunic as a 1-card play, and it's always getting 2 cards from deck, pretty much. Like they're probably not throwing all their equipment on this, and if they are, you're pretty happy. And I think more realistically, if they give 2 cards from this, they lose 2 cards from deck. If they don't block this, they probably lose 2 cards from deck. So yeah, excessive blood loss, especially in conjunction with equipment, like you said, is really impressive. I've seen those equipments block for like 13 life. If you're wondering why 13, is because it starts at 1 and then starts blocking for 2 when you buy it back. So it will be an odd number.
Yeah, yeah. I remember the game that we played at Armory, and holy, that equipment blocked like every other turn. It was kind of crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I think Huntsman has gotten a lot better. We'll have to see exactly where it lines up. It maybe depends a bit on the metagame, but yeah, Huntsman's got a lot more tools and I think is seemingly pretty good into a lot of these aggro decks.
Oh yeah, I think the equipment, the Graven Walkers is the my equipment of choice right now, but that equipment has been a huge upgrade. We were losing by like 3 or 4 or 5 points to some of these decks before, and now they just like handed us like 10 points of value in equipment, and just like, what happened? Like, where did this come from? And I guess one other card to shout out here. This is for basically any fatigue deck or any deck that wants to block. Unyielding Grip. This card's crazy. Like, it was crazy in Sage for just like most decks that wanted to block out as well, but Unyielding Grip is a 3 block arm piece that is playable in everyone as long as you have no cards in your hand, which is not a hard ask, right? For these decks that are trying to like do more than like 16, 17 damage in one turn.
Yeah, I agree. If you're a deck that wants to block out, this card's pretty interesting. I didn't mention it at the time because I forgot, but I think that in terms of like potential Sage bans, this is a card that could go and would help bring Kano down a notch. Kano having block 3 just really makes 15 life a lot less of a downside. So yeah, the card's really, really strong in Kano, and I think that's a card that they could potentially look at hitting for Sage.
You know what's also disgusting in Kano with Unyielding Grip? They get to activate Kano, play the card that they banished off the top, and then just have no cards in hand. Like,
It's really easy to empty the hand. They can like hit you. Usually, the play pattern with this is you use it with Absorb an Ether, the D react, and you kind of make this big play where you like block with your gloves, absorb an Ether, then play the spell in reactions, and then the gloves block for 3, and your absorb an Ether blocks for 4. So you do something like block 7, shoot you for 8, and it's really strong.
yeah, that's disgusting. Oh my god. Ugh. I think the combination of like small upgrades to the armor with Huntsman, where Huntsman used to maybe block like 5 or 6 in armor block, and now we're blocking for like over the course of the game, like against aggro decks, like 13 or 14 with armor block now, which is like a huge spike in the number of blocks that we're getting. So I think Huntsman now is going to be a pretty real deck. It will need to be tuned for a specific metagame, but like if you're trying to beat Fi, like you can do so. If you're just trying to beat Acilio, I think you can do so. You're not really reliant on non-attack actions that Temporal Wobble is like good into. And you really just want to block out Acilio anyway. So I feel like Huntsman is kind of positioned really well for this ProQuest season. The only problem is that if you play against like a really good player, it's still pretty hard for Huntsman to win. Like Huntsman's problems is still there, right? Like sometimes your turn cycle is like block for 6, swing dagger, pass, which just is not that great. We got a new card called Seeker Kunai, and this is a card that is a huge upgrade for to beat like essentially good players that are good at devaluing your turns. And Seeker Kunai is a instant item card that can be brought back from your graveyard by paying 2 silvers, and then its ability is pay 1 resource and target assassin attack action card gets +1. So it's essentially like a rebuyable attack reaction that can force really awkward blocks for things like Leave No Witness, Surgical Extraction, and even cards like Excessive Blood Loss. So yeah, I think Huntsman just got enough tools to actually have a game into almost every deck in the format except maybe Gravy. Gravy's kind of the deck that I need to practice and work on, but hopefully, Gravy's on the down low, and we can keep him there.
That's fair. That's fair. All right, let's move on. So those are the cards. Those are the new decks that we think are good. There are some other decks that also got meaningful support, but we don't think are quite there yet. Amongst these is Teklo Vossen. I think Boost Teklo is a real deck. I think he thrives in slower meta games where you get to like do the numbers thing, like you outnumbers RKO in a long game, for example, which is like impressive. But right now the meta is super aggro shifted, and that is not good for Teklo-Vossen. And I guess specifically, I think Boost Teklo-Vossen is the way to go. So yeah, I have a piece of content coming out for Teklo at some point coming up. But yeah, anyways, Teklo-Vossen, good, but not right now.
Yeah, it's the problem is the one blocks, right? Like you draw some hands with like two one blocks and you have to pitch it to convert it. So
It, even more than the one blocks is just like your game plan is to build like multiple pieces of equipment and do something powerful, but you're just playing against decks that want to end the game in like 3 turns, and that just doesn't line up well for you. The games, this is like amongst the shortest average turn cycle games of Flesh and Blood that I've been playing in quite some time. Is how I feel about the current meta, and yeah, Deklo doesn't line up well into that.
okay, that's pretty fair. Next, we on this list is Marlin. Marlin got the new harpoon in the set, so it got a real this piece of disruption at yellow. So this is a really big upgrade for her.
Yeah, she needed a threat density. This is threat density. She can kind of do like Codex CNC type stuff with this card now, which is cool. I think that she still has some fundamental problems, like consistency issues, and this does help with consistency, but I think she still has consistency issues. And I think maybe more than anything, wobble is a huge problem for Marlin. The turns where you keep 3 cards and you try to go activate my cannon Codex of Frailty and it gets wobbled, you kind of just lose. You get completely time locked and you lose 3 cards for it. And that's really brutal. You can also miss out on your loads and stuff. So the reason I harp on this is because I think that Marlin actually used to be pretty decent into Acilio, and it was maybe a reason to play the deck. That is not so much the case now, and that's that's tough. So yeah, I think Marlin is just she's okay. She's still fine, but she's kind of just fine.
You know what I'm getting from this episode?
Mhm.
Maybe temporal wobble was a mistake.
I think so. That is kind of like my personal feeling, but
Do you think the car would have been fine if it costed one?
it's possible. It would be a lot more reasonable because then it would take 2 cards for them. This card is kind of like, to put like a magic reference, this is like Force of Will, but you don't need to banish another card from your hand, and also has Cycling 0. Like this is a crazy piece of counter magic, and like yes, it is conditional, but so many of the good NAs are 0 cost anyways, and the cost of like needing a sigil is real, but pretty small, and because you can cycle it, basically 0.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just like kind of a wild card when you really stop and think about it.
At least we get the action point back.
Yeah, at least we get the action point back. You do get the action point back, so it doesn't completely end your turn most of the time, but sometimes it does end your turn anyways because you were going to codex them and then you don't have a codex.
Yeah. It also hits three of a kind if you have two sigils, right?
Yeah, it also hits 3 of a kind. It can also hit like take aim or something for a load effect, and there's spots where you can probably suss out that they're going to have a load effect, and yeah, it just hits enough stuff that it makes the matchup a lot worse.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's fair. But Marlin is good into Phi and Bolton, right? Like it is really good into these like decks that don't really want to block. Or that can't block that well.
It's good into Phi. It is okay into Bolton. Bolton can play D-Rex and has some decent armor.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, it's good into Phi.
Good into Phi. It's good into Phi. Pirate Puffin. Pirate Puffin got Cheating Scoundrel. This is 0 for 3 that you can wager a gold, and if you lose the wager, you can discard a card and you win the wager. This doesn't sound. Oh, and it blocks for 3. It doesn't sound like a huge deal, but this this deck kind of just didn't have enough ways to make gold. This helps a lot. It also got the baby golden sky warden where you can basically galvanize a single copper cog or a golden cog, sorry, and turn it back into a gold, and then it blocks for three. And I think the combination of these two cards just makes the deck way more consistent. And one of the things that is appealing about Pirate Puffin is you do get to play disruption. You can play things like CNC. I don't know if a mid-range deck is exactly where I want to be in this current metagame, so that's why we have it in this category. But this deck is pretty impressive. It does a lot of damage. It can play D-Reacts. It can play disruption. I think this is one of the closer things to a successful mid-range deck that we have in this format. Like I might believe a little more in Pirate Puffin than I do in like Kasai at the moment, for example, which is like not something I thought I would be saying.
Okay, okay, that's a cool take. That's a cool take. You think there's gonna be a couple of good puffins at Montreal?
It's possible. Yeah, I've heard a few people talking about this deck, and it's been pretty impressive. I think it's pretty good.
Okay, then let's keep moving along. We still have a couple more decks to talk about. So our next section here are potential meta calls. So these are decks that might be good into the metagame that we just talked about, right? Um,
Which I
so
think
on
is like primarily Phi, Acilio, Mario, maybe some KO, like this kind of like aggro meta.
yes, there's gonna be an aggro meta. But on the top of this list here, you have Katsu. I'm pretty surprised that you put Katsu here. Why do you think Katsu is good into these decks?
Katsu is really nasty against decks that don't want to block. Katsu's biggest problem before was Florian. And your Marionette matchup isn't great, but it's playable. I think it's like maybe slightly unfavored, but decent. But into the other aggro decks, you are really, really strong. And it's because they don't want to give you cards. And in particular, I think you are probably Acilio's worst matchup. The reason being that basically, if you present Edge of Autumn, you have this really, really nasty fork where you get to hit them. And if you Katsu trigger, you can Katsu trigger for Enact Vengeance, which is the Command and Conquer if it combos with Edge of Autumn. Plus, you have the Okana Scar Wraps to flick it, so you can bump it up to 7. So you can basically tutor on demand for CNC for 7. So your hands typically, assuming that you don't brick, so the way you lose, you brick on go again. Assuming that you don't brick, you can put them in the spot where you get to chip them and CNC them, and then chip them and then CNC them, and then find the hand that does like 30 damage and just kills them. And you don't really play any non-attack actions. So Wobble, I guess you have Ancestral Harmony, but like it's a card you resolve sometimes. So Wobble's not really on the table against you, and you're like as fast as Acilio, plus you have tutorable disruption, basically. And if they want to block your Katsu trigger so that you don't CNC them, they're still losing cards from hand and they can't combo you. Is like kind of the idea of playing Katsu.
Okay, that's fair. And yeah, big one. They don't really have a good wobble counter, so
Yeah.
your ceiling turns aren't reliant on a non-attack action.
And I need to play Katsu Fi more, but I assume that it functions kind of similarly. Katsu is really good into most aggro decks just because you get to tutor for CNC, and then if your hand doesn't, when your hand's bad, you tutor for CNC. When your hand's good, you do 30 damage, and that's pretty strong against decks that don't want to block. Against the decks that want to block you and deny you your Katsu trigger and play small hands, like the deck is weaker. But it gets some upgrades. I think most notably the Wind Cutter, the gloves that if you've hit twice, you can pay a resource, get a Shuriken, and the Shuriken has an attack to react +1. Against the slow decks, you can play Kodachis for chip damage and then get out multiple Shurikens, and then it becomes super, super hard to block against him. So I think that I don't want to say that he has like no bad matchups now. I think that the blocky decks are still the biggest problem for Katsu, but he has more tools into those matchups than he used to. He also got, what is it, Tigrine Reflex. This is a 0 for 3 combo card that blocks 2. It combos with a Crouching Tiger. Not really relevant for Katsu, but you can discard it, give an attack +1, and create a Crouching Tiger in your hand. What's notable about Crouching Tiger and Katsu is it's a 0-cost attack action, so you can discard it to the Katsu trigger. So this is a lot like Ancestral Empowerment in the deck, which is already a staple. And you can use this to push over a Katsu trigger, discard the Tiger, and it's kind of like a free +1 that helps you Katsu, which is great.
Okay, interesting. And Katsu did pretty well in the last CC calling that we saw, right, by the hands of Nia.
Yep. Yeah, he had a top 8 performance. He was targeting Acilio. He was partially playing the deck because he likes the deck, but he was also playing it because it targets Acilio. And I think as a meta call right now, pretty good. Again, better at a calling, worse at a PQ, unless your PQ area. Like you know your PQ area. It could be a good call in your PQ area, but it depends on your area.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Then the next deck to talk about here is Victor Goldmane. I feel like with the meta as we are talking about, Victor Goldmane goes significantly up in value, right? The two worst matchups for Victor will be Verdance and Gravy, and if they are actually, you know, being played a little bit less, it is good into kind of every single deck that we've talked about so far.
I've heard that Acilio is still hard, which is a little tough, but you are really good into Phi, and you're good into Bolton, and you're solid into Marionette, which I think is a decent place to be.
Yeah, I think so. And with the rules changed into Gravy, where you're not just like kind of 0% into Gravy either, I feel like Victor Goldmane is a reasonable deck to bring now for these calling. Actually, like I can see Victor Goldmane doing pretty well, like deep day two, if his matchups line up kind of well. Yeah, the Acilio matchup can be tough, but like Victor can still run at Acilio pretty fast too.
Yeah, agreed.
It just depends on how much gold Victor gets to create in the first couple of turns, I think.
Yeah, agreed. Other potential meta calls, we're kind of getting down to ones that I think we don't think are quite as good. There's Jarl. A lot of similar ideas here. You can target the kind of red line-ish aggro decks by playing a Guardian. Because you're ice talented, you get more disruption. You can also build into Felling of the Crown if you want to, which is notable. That card's really strong. I've mostly found Jarl to be worse Victor because you do a lot less damage, and clashing and drawing cards is just kind of broken. Victor also got Shield Beater, which I think is a card that maybe doesn't work in every matchup, but it's like a sledge. It's a 5-power sledge, but it's one-handed, so you can use it with the gold shield, and I think that's pretty big for Victor. Whereas Jarl, I don't know. Yeah, you got Elemental Strike. It's not bad. I find that this deck disrupts. Like I played Phi into it, and if I'm just sitting willing to like sit there, block, seen some Phi decks starting to play like Energy Potion, you start doing things like this. You just sit there and you wait, and it just takes Jarl so long to kill you that you find your window and you kill them anyways. So yeah, I see the logic behind Jarl. I've heard some people talk about this deck. I think Victor is the better Guardian right now.
Yeah, I think I agree on that. Yeah, I'm just not really sure why you want to be playing Yarrow. I guess Stalagmite might be a good reason, but like
You have good cards, like you have Stalagmite, you have the headpiece that freezes them, which is relevant against some heroes. You get Felling of the Crown, you have Channel Lake Frigid. It all sounds so reasonable. You just don't kill people. The thing about Victor that's scary is like he wins some clashes, he plays Visit the Goldmane Estate, then he Golden Suns you for 15 and you're down. And it's like, yeah, there's just like games that you play like 3 turns and you're like, I'm at 15 against this Victor. Like he's smashing me. Like not only is he disrupting me, but he's also just smashing my face in.
yeah, the sentiment that I heard. Well, I was playing Victor into Edison recently because he was like, "Oh, I feel like." He was like saying Phi and Bolton was like the two best decks in the format, and I'm like, it has some bad matchups, like Victor, for example. And then he's like, after playing a couple of games, he's just like, "Why am I at 10? Why are you at 35?" I'm just like, "I'm blocking and sending disruption. What do you mean?"
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
your cards don't block, but your cards don't block, but then when my card hits you, you can't play your cards.
Yeah, and then you also have Test of Iron Grip. That card is gross. I kind of hate these like block discard cards. They also printed Blunt in this set. I forgot to mention in the Bolton section. Blunton's really good against Marionette, but these like, oh, you swung your weapon, block, you discard a card, or oh, you attacked with something, Test of Iron Grip, you discard a card. I do not. I don't really love this effect. It's really powerful though, so you should definitely play it in your Victor deck. But it, whenever I play against this effect, I'm like, why is this here? Or when I use it against somebody, I'm like, I don't know, like, because you get caught.
Yeah. Well, I feel like Victor kind of needed this card for it to be reasonable, though.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah, maybe that is just the answer that Victor just needed it. But yeah, I hope that they don't go overboard with this style of effect because it is
Look, we need some kind of disruption, and this type of disruption is the best type of disruption.
on your turn,
Yeah, on your turn, instant speed.
like Wobble.
Ugh. I'm glad Wobble doesn't hit Test of Iron Grip.
That's true.
I don't know if that's where you want to be, but sure. Okay, then next, last deck on our list to wrap up the episode. You have Dio with a question mark. Is this deck good?
It's okay. I haven't played too much of this deck, admittedly, but my thought process is basically Dio. One of the big reasons I play Dio and why I played it at Columbus is that you target Acilio really hard. I think you are still probably favored into Acilio, but Wobble is really good against you, like really, really good against you. Your whole thing was that you had a fast clock plus disruption, and they have an out tier disruption. Also, if they wobble something like a red boom grenade off the top, that's probably worth like 4 damage and either a card draw off Cerebellum or a pistol shot. They can wobble your what's the other card? Spark of Genius. So I think wobble is a complete house against Dio, and it's not so much like the matchup was like very Dio favored. I think it's probably still Dio favored, but it might be more like a I don't know, maybe like a 40%er instead of a like 20%er from the Acilio side, which is, yeah, it hurts a lot of the reason you would want to play this deck. And I think that if you want to prey on Acilio and you want to prey on the aggro decks, I might believe in Katsu a little more. So I think Dio is okay, but yeah, there's some problems. And the Guardians are not good for Dio. Although I guess Victor is also not good for Katsu, to be fair. You don't really want to see Victor Goldman as Katsu. You have outs. You always have outs, but you don't want to see that deck.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Do you know the thing about this? Like after talking about this like meta game, I kind of like this meta game right now.
Because you can play Huntsman.
Yeah, I can play Huntsman and feel really comfortable into like basically every deck that I play against other than Gravy. Or I can play Victor Goldmane and feel pretty comfortable into like most of the matchups except for maybe like Huntsman and Acilio.
That's fair. I don't love this format, but it is okay. I think.
Look, this is the most Victor and Huntsman has been playable in a meta game for a long time. I'm okay with where it's at right now. I get to play the decks I want to play.
Okay. Good criteria for whether a meta game's good. I'm glad we're super objective and not biased at all.
Oh yeah, not biased at all. Not biased at all. You know, I'm you know, the only complaint is maybe I wish Secret Kunai pumped for 2 power instead of 1, but yeah, that's about it.
Okay, so yeah, I don't know. This meta is fine. We'll see. Maybe I'm over exaggerating, and Acilio will be more reasonable than I think. But my suspicion is that Acilio is a little too good and going to warp this format a little bit. But yeah, we'll see. Well, I think things will really come into focus in Montreal. It's still honestly pretty early in CC. I think a lot of people had been focusing on Silver Age until pretty recently. And yeah, this will be our first glimpse this coming weekend, and then I'm sure things will develop as we go into PQs as well. I feel like after there's like a week or two of PQs, it's just like, yup, these are the good things we know now. Sometimes there's like a shift like into week 3, but by the end of PQs, we usually have a pretty good handle on what the meta is.
Yeah, that's fair. That's very fair. Okay. I think we talked enough. Let's just wrap it up here.
Yeah. So I hope that this was useful, found it interesting, gave you stuff to think about what CC will look like either for Montreal or for your local PQs. If you disagree with us, have other takes, think there's things that we overlooked, we would love to hear your thoughts. You can get in touch with us on social media. Jay is at Ueda I'm at Yukili Bender on Twitter. I'm also at Yukili Bender on Blue Sky, so you can find us on either of those platforms. Or you can get in touch with us through email on thebobble@gmail.com or through our Patreon Discord at onthebobble.com. Sorry, at patreon.com/onthebobble. But yeah, that's going to be a wrap. Good luck to everyone at your, I guess, Silver Age PQs this weekend, and then your upcoming CC PQs on the following weekend.